so that brings us to the notices of motion. So the first one was one that was deferred at the last meeting. It was moved by Councillor Wagner, seconded by Councillor Fegan. Be it resolved, the council approves the $10,000 previously allocated to the production of a tennis court / pickleball court to be reallocated back to providing soccer nets to the Shelburne Soccer Club, to provide protection from the sewage treatment plant holding ponds in the amount provided to town staff and council from a written letter of request and quote of the cost from providing a Canadian supplier by the Shelburne Soccer Club. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, basically, you know, my thought was bringing it up that we should help the soccer club to provide some protection, you know, against the balls going into the treatment plant. You know, like as we heard earlier today from Dan, that the balls are not cheap. So if we could help, you know, with protecting that so that they don't have to incur added costs for their seasons for balls, you know, going into the sewage treatment plant, holding tanks and whatnot, then I think it, you know, it would be sort of part of our responsibility maybe to sort of protect our plant as well as, you know, we put those fields over there, so we should help protect them as well.
After listening to what was presented to us today with the soccer organization as it is, they don't need the 10,000. So personally, I'm actually willing and might suggest that we withdraw this motion and look more at what was requested today, and try to figure, is he asking for 3,000? Because he was talking about giving up to 5,000 and his total was 7. So I'm a little confused on exactly what he's asking for. And that's why I kind of wanted to get, what is your actual cost for the sea cans? So as far as this motion goes here, I kind of want to withdraw this one and pursue what we were talking about earlier on today. This would probably be more my suggestion at this point.
Which is the motion that was brought by Councillor Bernardo. Yeah.
Honestly, that motion allows staff to do a little bit more investigation as well with the soccer club, to come back to more of a realistic, whatever the number is, and then find it where it is in the budget. I mean, if we're only looking at a couple $1,000s, I'm sure we can find that somewhere in the budget.
Absolutely, yeah.
Easy enough. You know, whether it comes out of parks or whatever.
Staff is suggesting that we can maybe save some time. We can maybe hash that out now quickly.
Okay.
Sure.
So I apologize, I think the staff were confused that we
we
thought
are.
that there was an additional $5,000 being requested tonight on top of the budget that was presented in the delegation. I would suggest that you approve the costs as presented tonight and direct us to come back and report to you where that could be funded from. It'll be just a very simple line item. So for example, it may be the recreation reserve, it may be other places where we've already identified there's some flexibility for spending. But for the sake of the timing that will support their needs, assuming that you are going to support this, it will just save us a lot of time for potentially what may be $3,000 if the club is willing to support those costs as well. So if we go back to the presentation where the nets were shown to be $2,750 and the sea can is $5,000 for a combined cost of $7,750 plus HST, there was not an additional $5,000, which again, that's my confusion, I apologize. And they're willing to fund up to 50% of that budget or $5,000. So really what you're looking for, like $3,875. I think if you approve it, advise them that the process will go forward. We will come back to you and define where that money will be funded from.
My only concern with that is, to Councillor Fegan's point, is even it may very well be $3,800 if you approve it as is, but it actually might be less. So because we don't know what the actual numbers are when it comes to the CCAM, because as Dan indicated, it was quote unquote a quick search that he did on Google. So whatever amount of money, if we decide to do it, I'd like to see what the accurate number is before we go ahead and approve anything. Secondly, he talked about installation of this equipment, and he assumed that it would be no problem for Public Works to go ahead and do that. And if they didn't do it, then there may be additional cost that the town would have to pony up to get this thing done. So I'd like to see, before we approve anything, what the actual numbers are, and then we could go and take a look to see where that money could be found, and then make a more firmer decision that way. I can't imagine it would take that long, but that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, just to that point, the only concern that I have is that we've been going in circles on this for a while. And if we put this off again, it's just gonna continue on and on. What staff is suggesting is that if we can put this to bed tonight, we're done with it. That's the only reason why I'm kind of, realistically, by the presentation that they gave us, they're talking 7,000. And if they're willing to put up 50% of that, so we're talking 3,500.
They're willing to spend up to 50% of a $5,000 budget, so 2,500 is what they're willing to contribute.
So
So
it's-
to
And
council,
they're overall, so they're basically looking for $5,000.
My understanding was he said they had budgeted 5,000,
Yeah,
so I think
they
they're willing to
budgeted
pay
5,000.
50% up.
oh, sorry,
to
50% up to 5,000,
Up to
so
$5,000.
a $10,000 original budget. So to the deputy mayor's point, there could be a condition placed on it that nothing will be purchased without receipts or a literal quote to expedite that. I mean, really what you've asked us to do is to find a funding source. So, for us to do an entire report in 2 or 3 weeks, to tell you that it's gonna come out of probably one of 3 locations. It's gonna come out of the recreation reserve, which you contributed an extra $10,000, which you removed from the budget for this purpose, for tennis courts, which we still have funding. It will come from potentially underspent accounts to the year to date, or it will be determined that it is applied to account that will be over budget. I mean, there's really 3 options here.
So,
Or you don't fund it, which is option 4. So I didn't think about that option.
Well, that's definitely an option.
So I just thought, for the sake of what the process entails for this, I mean, the waiving of fees is not something we're addressing in this component of the analysis, but we as the town do not want anybody even contemplating climbing over netting or any kind of barrier to retrieve soccer balls in a waste treatment pond.
It's a huge line.
It's not, regardless of, the fact that you can retrieve the ball potentially, it's not something we want to encourage, and if this will be a barrier, literally, to preempt that kind of activity, that's a positive thing.
okay, so the way I want to motion it is that we pay for the nets.
So that's-
Because that's the way I would like to motion. We pay for the nets, because the nets, the ponds are there. They were there before the fields went in, but we did put the fields there and the balls, and we don't want to encourage people to go over. As far as the C-can goes, that's really not our problem. That's his problem. He wants it, store it. He can pay for it to go in there, he can pay for the gravel, whatever else he has to do. That's not my problem. That's his problem. He's got storage right now. That's his problem. But we'll pay for the nets and the installation, because it should be installed properly, and it should not be somebody else installing. So where that funding comes from, whether it comes from underused funds or whether it comes from the parks, whatever, that's not my worry, that's not worry about that. But we pay for the nets. If that's something council will work with, I'll make that motion.
So if we're going to install the nets and ensure that they are an asset that's maintained, I would suggest that you consider that the town of Shelburne will purchase, own, and install these nets and have responsibility for their care. So that there's no need for the soccer club to manage or be worried about that.
Yeah.
Because we would ensure that they're stored so that their longevity is protected.
Yeah.
And then the C-CAM would be the responsibility of the club to
And
manage.
if they budgeted $5,000 for this, then
Then
that
that's-
should be.
And they've already got enough.
So the nets is protecting a barrier to our property. They should be installed properly by us, and they should be removed as required by us and stored so that they don't deteriorate in the winter. And if they're vandalized, then at least our insurance, because we own the property, will be covered.
But
So
again,
that's something we can probably manage.
but it'll be subject to, if we're going with the nets, again, it's going to be, as you indicated, subject to receipts obviously being provided, yes?
So we're gonna just manage the
so
whole
we would have
process.
control.
Okay,
We're just gonna do
okay,
it.
fair enough, yeah, that's right, that's right.
So procedurally, we have a motion on the floor, so we can deal with it one of 2 ways. We can either vote on it, presumably defeat it, or the mover and seconder can withdraw it.
I'm willing to withdraw it personally.
Yeah, no trouble.
Okay. So that motion that's on the floor has been withdrawn. Under the procedural bylaw, technically we should have a notice of motion, but I think there is sort of consent amongst everybody to move ahead, so we'll entertain Councillor Benato's motion, which he's drafting. We'll hopefully deal with this with some finality.
Is there, what was the options? Surplus. Is there any?
So I guess that will mean then, like town staff will have to go and put the nets down or whatever at, after the games or put them up. before the
I think
games?
in terms of
How's that
actual
work?
use,
We could have a relationship in terms of how the operations of it on a day-to-day basis for the nets, and we can figure that out. I mean, I'm more concerned about the outright purchase, the outright ownership, and the outright removal so that they're protected during the winter.
Right.
There's a lot of relationships where baseball clubs, for example, have the authority to turn lights on and off. This would be the same protocol.
So not just Shelburne minor soccer, but whoever may be renting that field for whatever purpose. Because it's going to be just like the lights themselves. If you're having some other soccer
on it, I would imagine, where you access the
So I'll review that with Jim and Brad tomorrow on the operational side of this. And hopefully we can transfer that easy peasy. Hopefully that's what it is.
We're done, Steve? All right.
Sure.
I got Steve.
Well, you can scratch your name out.
Scratch mine out. I drafted that.
Well, she brought the
I'll
original
just second
one,
it.
so.
I'll just-
Am I gonna scratch my name on?
No, wait, his name. I just know she was
Just scratch my name on, scratch my name, I don't care.
No, it's whatever. It's not a big deal. I don't care who does it as long as it just gets done.
Well, then
So-
just keep it the way it is.
It was a joint effort. All right, so moved by Councillor Benato, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. Be it resolved, the council directs staff to purchase the barrier nets for Thunder Field and install the nets, and further that the nets remain the property of the town of Shelburne. Direction. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried.
Next time, Lindsay, I'll make sure it gets around too.
All right, airplane is really.
Like I said, I don't care as long as it gets done.